Something strange is happening inside Russia. Reports say Vladimir Putin is no longer working from the Kremlin, but from a series of underground bunkers. Not one, not two, but several offices designed to look identical. The same desk, the same wallpaper, even the same lamps and paintings. The goal? To make it seem like he never moves, even when he's fleeing across the country. It's the ultimate trick for a leader who doesn't want his people to know that he's running scared. But why now? Why hide underground? The answer lies in a single night. A night when Russian drones crossed into Poland and triggered a crisis that could have spiraled into something far bigger. In the middle of the night, when most of Poland was asleep, air raid sirens tore through the silence. Defense systems lit up. Pilots scrambled, radar screens filled with incoming targets. At first, it might have seemed like a navigational mistake, one or two stray drones drifting off course. But then came more and more. By dawn, Poland had counted nearly 24 incursions. These weren't mistakes. This was a deliberate strike. The response was immediate. Poland activated its defenses, but it wasn't alone. NATO jets from Germany, the Netherlands, and Italy joined in, intercepting and destroying drones in midair. Property was damaged, windows shattered, buildings burned. But miraculously, no civilians were killed. Even so, the message was clear. Russian drones had crossed into a NATO country. That line had been crossed. When investigators reached the crash sites, what they found made the story even clearer. The drones carried extra fuel tanks, modifications that allowed them to travel farther than usual. One had slammed directly into a Polish military base south of Warsaw. Another tore through a residential area, hitting homes where families had been sleeping at 2 in the morning. These weren't wayward machines wandering off course. They were designed to go deep into Poland, and they did. Almost instantly, Moscow's propaganda machine went into overdrive. State media, online bots, and pro-Russian influencers all pushed the same claim. This wasn't Russia, it was Ukraine staging a false flag. The logic was absurd. Why would Ukraine attack a NATO base that supplies Ukraine with the weapons it needs to survive? Why would Kyiv risk alienating the very allies that keep it alive? The answer is simple. It wouldn't. But the point of Russian propaganda isn't to convince you of one neat lie. The point is to bury you in so many lies, so many half-truths, that you throw your hands up and decide there's no truth at all. Confusion is the weapon. But this time, the confusion strategy didn't work. Because while Moscow was denying everything, its closest ally Belarus slipped. Belarusian defense officials announced that drones had crossed their airspace, that their radar operators had even warned Poland and Lithuania of unidentified craft heading west. In other words, Belarus confirmed the very thing Russia was trying to deny. The lie collapsed in real time. That was the moment Poland escalated. The government triggered Article 4 of the NATO treaty, calling for emergency consultations. This is one step below Article 5, the Collective Defense Clause. But even the consultation step is significant. It means NATO must gather, assess the threat, and prepare coordinated action. Britain sent Typhoon fighters to Poland almost immediately. NATO announced stronger air defenses across the eastern flank. The message was unmistakable. The alliance was watching, and it was ready. And here's where it gets fascinating. If this was a calculated move by Russia, the goals were obvious. With winter coming, Moscow fears Ukrainian drones striking its energy infrastructure. Refineries, oil depots, power plants, all vulnerable. Ukraine has already proven it can hit those targets. Just last month, nearly a quarter of Russia's refining capacity was taken offline by Ukrainian drone strikes. That's devastating to an economy already bleeding. So why send drones into Poland? The theory is simple. Russia wants NATO to shift its air defense resources westward, into Poland, to protect against more accidental incursions. If NATO systems are diverted, Ukraine gets less. And if Ukraine gets less, Russia has an easier time smashing Ukraine's energy grid this winter. It's a cold calculation, but it backfired. Instead of NATO pulling defenses away from Ukraine, the alliance doubled down on both fronts, Poland and Ukraine. Instead of dividing the alliance, the attack united it. And instead of looking strong, Putin looked desperate. Which brings us back to the bunkers. Reports from Russian insiders claim Putin has been spending more and more time underground. He works from fortified offices with no windows, no view of the outside world. To cover this up, identical replicas of the same office have been built in multiple locations across Russia. Whenever he moves, whether because of security fears, drone threats, or simple paranoia, he can sit at the same desk, in the same chair, and record a video message that looks exactly like the last one. To the public, nothing has changed. But in reality, their leader is shuttling from one bunker to another. Terrified of being targeted, this is the image of a leader who wanted NATO to fracture, but ended up running scared. It's a striking reversal. Putin once cast himself as the strongman challenging the West. Now, after one botched operation, he's exposed as vulnerable, isolated, and hiding beneath the ground, and this isn't over. NATO's consultations are ongoing. More reinforcements are heading east. Belarus, meanwhile, has announced joint exercises with Russian forces, exercises that suspiciously resemble an invasion rehearsal for Poland. Each move triggers a countermove, and the tension builds. So what began as a night of drones has turned into something much bigger, a test of NATO unity, a humiliation for Russian propaganda, and a glimpse inside the fear gripping the Kremlin itself. Deep underground, in a room with no windows, sits a man who once ruled Russia with an iron grip. The furniture looks familiar, the desk, the lamps, the paintings on the wall. But here's the catch. There are at least 3 versions of this office scattered across Russia, all built to be identical. Wherever he goes, he can sit down, turn on the camera, and appear to the Russian people as if nothing has changed. In reality, their president is moving like a hunted man, hiding from threats both outside and inside his own borders. Why is Vladimir Putin hiding in bunkers? To answer that, we need to go back to a single night, a night when Russian drones crossed into NATO airspace and nearly changed the course of the war. It was a quiet evening in Poland. Families were asleep, children tucked into bed, soldiers off duty. Then, just after midnight, the radar screens lit up. Dozens of blips appeared, crossing from the east. Sirens wailed across towns and villages. Pilots scrambled into their jets. Anti-aircraft guns roared into life. What Poland didn't yet know was that this wasn't a malfunction. This wasn't a mistake. It was a coordinated wave. By dawn, the damage was clear. Almost 24 drones had entered Polish airspace. Some were shot down, some crashed. One slammed into a Polish military base, others tore into civilian homes. Windows shattered, walls crumbled, and people woke to explosions that ripped through the night. And all of it, Poland said, came from Russia. Now, here's why this is extraordinary. NATO is not at war with Russia. NATO has gone out of its way to avoid direct confrontation. But on this night, the line blurred. Polish airspace had been violated. A NATO base had been hit. Civilians in a peaceful country had come under attack. This wasn't Ukraine. This wasn't the battlefield. This was NATO territory. When Polish investigators combed the wreckage, they noticed something chilling. These drones had been modified. They carried extra fuel tanks, enabling them to fly farther than their standard range. That meant they weren't lost. They weren't wandering. They had been prepared to strike deeper into NATO land. And that raised a terrifying possibility. What if this had been just a test? Moscow's response came quickly and predictably. The Kremlin denied everything. State media said it was all a mistake. Pro-Russian influencers insisted Ukraine had staged the attack to frame Russia. Social media bots flooded the internet with a single message. It makes no sense for Russia to do this. Only Ukraine benefits. But here's the flaw. Why would Ukraine attack the very bases supplying it with weapons and ammunition? Why would Kyiv risk alienating its lifeline to survival? The answer is simple. It wouldn't. The claim collapsed under basic logic. But Russia didn't care about logic. The purpose of disinformation is not to win the argument. The purpose is to bury the argument in so much noise, so many competing lies, that people give up searching for the truth. And yet, this time the lie unraveled, because one of Russia's own allies, Belarus, slipped. Belarusian officials admitted that their radar operators had tracked drones crossing their skies, and that they had even warned Poland and Lithuania of unidentified aircraft heading west. In one sentence, Belarus confirmed the very thing Russia denied. The cover story crumbled. With that, Poland acted. The government invoked Article 4 of the NATO treaty, the clause that forces the alliance to hold emergency consultations when a member feels threatened. This is one step below the famous Article 5 collective defense. But make no mistake, it is serious. NATO met within hours. Britain dispatched Typhoon jets to reinforce Polish airspace. Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands offered support. The eastern flank of NATO bristled with new defenses. Now let's step back. Why would Russia risk this? Why poke NATO, an alliance far stronger than Russia, especially while bogged down in Ukraine? The answer lies in timing. Winter is coming. Every year, Russia and Ukraine wage a brutal energy war when the temperatures drop. Russia tries to bomb Ukraine's power plants, plunging cities into darkness. Ukraine retaliates by striking Russian oil refineries and depots. And here's the key. Ukraine has gotten very good at this. Just last month, Ukrainian drones took out nearly a quarter of Russia's oil refining capacity. Gasoline shortages spread inside Russia. Prices spiked. The economy groaned. For a country already under sanctions, losing that much refining power is catastrophic. So what does Russia need? Breathing room. It wants NATO's best air defense systems shifted out of Ukraine and into Poland. If NATO diverts resources to protect Poland from more accidental incursions, Ukraine's skies become weaker. Russia's missiles and drones have a better shot at crippling Ukraine's energy grid. It's a cold, ruthless calculation, but the gamble backfired. Instead of weakening NATO's resolve, the attack strengthened it. Instead of peeling allies apart, it pulled them closer. And instead of intimidating the West, it made Putin look desperate. Which brings us back to those bunkers. Reports suggest Putin now works almost exclusively underground. The windowless rooms hide not just his location, but his fear. Identical replicas have been built in multiple regions. That way, if he needs to flee, he can appear on television from a new bunker, and no one will know he's moved. The illusion of control is maintained, even as the reality slips away. Think about the symbolism. A leader once parading through Moscow in choreographed displays of power is now hiding in a sealed room. Terrified of a drone strike, his people see a calm, unchanging office. But in reality, their president is on the run, recording messages from bunkers like a fugitive. Meanwhile, NATO is hardening its defenses. Poland is urging stronger action, and Belarus, caught between loyalty to Moscow and fear of NATO, has exposed cracks in Russia's story. Every move Putin makes is now under scrutiny. Every denial is challenged. Every operation risks backfiring. This is the new reality. One night of drones didn't just breach Polish skies. It exposed the paranoia at the top of the Kremlin, the limits of Russian strategy, and the growing unity of NATO. It turned Putin's calculated risk into a public humiliation. And so the man who once claimed he would redraw Europe's borders is now hiding in a room with no windows, hoping the world won't notice the walls closing in.